I never thought I would reach 63 years old and still have to prove my worth to anyone. But there I was, standing in my own kitchen on that Tuesday morning in late March, watching my daughter-in-law Patricia roll her eyes at me for what felt like the 100th time that month. The spring sunlight was streaming through my kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes in the air and highlighting the dismissive expression on her perfectly made-up face. My son Michael had married her 5 years ago, and in that time, I had tried everything humanly possible to build a bridge between us. I had invited her to lunches that she canceled at the last minute with vague excuses about work emergencies. I had offered to help with the kids, only to be told my methods were outdated and not aligned with modern parenting philosophies. I had sent thoughtful gifts on birthdays and holidays, receiving perfunctory thank you texts in return, usually days later. But Patricia seemed absolutely determined to burn every single bridge I tried to construct between us, and I was running out of ideas on how to reach her. The morning it all started, I was doing what I did every Tuesday morning at 7:30 sharp, preparing to head out for my day organizing the community center's donation drive. I had been volunteering there for 15 years, ever since my husband Richard passed away from a sudden massive heart attack that left me spinning in a world that suddenly felt far too empty and far too large at the same time. He had been my anchor, my partner, my best friend for 38 years. And when he died, I thought I might drown in the grief. The volunteer work gave me purpose when I desperately needed something to hold on to. It kept me connected to people when I wanted to withdraw from the world. It made me feel like I still mattered, like I still had something valuable to contribute when everything else in my life had been torn apart. It pulled me out of the dark grief that threatened to swallow me whole in those first terrible months after his death. But Patricia never saw it that way. She never asked about my volunteer work. She never showed even the slightest curiosity about how I spent my days or what I did with my time. I was standing at my kitchen counter, double-checking my volunteer schedule, and making sure I had all the donation receipts carefully organized in my folder, when I heard tires on my gravel driveway. I looked out the window to see Patricia's black luxury SUV pulling up, moving too fast as always, leaving deep tracks in the carefully raked gravel I had spent an hour on the previous afternoon. She showed up at my door without any warning, without a phone call or a text message, her vehicle packed to the brim with suitcases, and my two precious grandchildren, Emma and Lucas, looking confused and slightly worried in the back seat. Emma was 7 years old, with her father's dark curls that bounced adorably when she moved and my hazel eyes that seemed to take in absolutely everything around her. Lucas was 5, all boundless energy and endless questions, with his mother's blonde hair and a smile that could light up even the darkest room. I loved those kids more than my next breath, more than anything else in this entire world. Patricia barely looked at me as she started unloading bags from the back of her SUV, her designer heels clicking sharply on my concrete walkway, her phone already pressed to her ear even as she gestured impatiently for the kids to get out of the car. She was wearing one of her expensive business suits, the kind that probably cost more than my entire monthly grocery budget, and her hair was pulled back in that severe bun she always wore when she was in full corporate warrior mode. Michael is traveling for work for the next 2 weeks, some big important project in California that he absolutely cannot miss, and I have that conference in Seattle that I absolutely cannot reschedule under any circumstances. The kids are staying with you, since you don't do anything all day anyway. The words hit me like a physical slap directly across the face. I actually felt myself rock back slightly on my heels, my breath catching in my throat. I stood there completely frozen, my hand still gripping the doorknob so tightly that my knuckles turned stark white, trying desperately to process what she had just said to me. Nothing all day. As if my entire life, all my carefully chosen activities, all my deliberately scheduled commitments, all the meaningful relationships I had built and nurtured and maintained over 15 years, meant absolutely nothing whatsoever, because I was not sitting in some sterile office cubicle or climbing some soul-crushing corporate ladder. As if the value of a human being could only be measured by the size of their paycheck and the importance of their business card title. I opened my mouth to respond, to tell her right then and there about the comprehensive literacy program I had helped establish from absolute scratch 3 years ago that now successfully served over 50 adults in our community. About the 20 struggling families we had successfully helped find permanent stable housing last year alone, through the community center's carefully cultivated partnership with local landlords and property managers. About the massive fundraiser I had been meticulously planning for 6 entire months that would not only feed 300 people, but would also raise desperately needed money for a playground in the poorest neighborhood in our town, where half the kids qualified for free lunch and the old equipment had been condemned as unsafe 2 years ago. I wanted to list every single thing I did, every person whose life I had touched, every hour I dedicated to making our community a better place to live. But she was already herding the children toward my door with those impatient hand gestures, her phone pressed to her ear with her shoulder, her fingers flying across her tablet screen at lightning speed, already mentally onto her next meeting or conference call or whatever corporate emergency could not possibly wait another 30 seconds. She was multitasking me right out of the conversation, as if I was just another mundane item on her endless to-do list to be checked off quickly and then forgotten completely. I will pick them up in exactly 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today. There is food in the bags, pre-packaged and labeled, and their schedules are printed out with all the details. Try to keep them on routine if you can manage it. She did not wait for my answer. She did not ask if I was available or if this timeline worked with my own plans and commitments. She did not even make direct eye contact with me as she spoke. She just assumed, the way she always assumed without question, that my time was inherently less valuable than hers, that my days were empty vessels simply waiting to be filled with whatever she needed from me at any given moment. After she left, peeling out of my driveway and sending gravel flying, I stood in my living room surrounded by mountains of children's luggage and felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Anger. Pure, hot anger that started deep in my chest and spread through my entire body like wildfire. But right behind the anger came something else, something stronger and more useful. Determination. Cold, clear determination. Emma tugged gently on my sleeve. Her small face tilted up toward mine with concern written all over it. "Grandma, are you okay? You look funny." Kind of mad, but also kind of excited. I looked down at her sweet, worried face and smiled, feeling my jaw unclench slightly. "I am more than okay, sweetheart. I am absolutely fine. In fact, I am going to show you and your brother something really special this week. But first, let me make some very important phone calls." That night, after I finally got the kids settled into the guest room with their stuffed animals and favorite blankets, after reading them 3 bedtime stories and answering what felt like 100 questions about why they had to stay with me and where their parents were and when they would be back, I sat alone at my kitchen table with my worn notebook, the one I had been using to meticulously plan the community center's biggest fundraiser yet. The one that had taken me 6 solid months of careful organizing and coordinating and negotiating. The event was scheduled for the end of this very week, and Patricia had absolutely no idea it even existed because she had never bothered to ask. I called my friend Dorothy first. She had been my partner in crime for most of my volunteer projects over the years, and I trusted her completely. "Dorothy, I need to make a slight change to our plans for the fundraiser. I am bringing my grandchildren to absolutely everything this week, every single activity and event. Can we make it work without causing too much disruption?" Dorothy laughed warmly on the other end of the line. "Honey, those kids are going to get the education of a lifetime. Bring them along to everything. We will put them to work and show them what real community service looks like." I smiled, feeling some of the tension leave my shoulders. "Thank you. I knew I could count on you." What did Patricia say this time? Dorothy knew the whole complicated history between me and my daughter-in-law. She said I don't do anything all day, so obviously I was free to watch the kids for 2 weeks without any notice. I heard the bitterness in my own voice. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. "Well then, I guess we are going to show her exactly what you do all day. This is going to be interesting." Over the next few days, Emma and Lucas became my constant shadows, following me everywhere I went. On Wednesday morning, we headed to the food bank where I coordinated deliveries 3 times every single week. The building was an old converted warehouse on the edge of town, with high ceilings and concrete floors that echoed with every footstep. I showed them how we carefully sorted donations by type and expiration date, how we packed boxes methodically for families based on their specific needs and dietary restrictions, how we made absolutely sure no one in our community went hungry if we could possibly prevent it. Lucas helped me stack cans on the metal shelves, his little face so serious and focused as he lined them up perfectly. Emma worked alongside Mrs. Chen, a tiny elderly woman who had come to this country as a refugee 40 years ago and now dedicated her time to helping others. Emma was learning how to organize the fresh produce section, separating the good items from anything that was starting to spoil, making sure everything was displayed attractively so people felt dignity when they came to shop. Mrs. Chen squeezed Emma's shoulder gently with her weathered hand. Your grandmother is a true blessing to this entire community. She has helped my family personally, and so many other families. We would be lost without her. Emma looked up at me with new eyes, seeing me differently than she ever had before. Grandma, I did not know you did this. Why did not you tell us? I knelt down to her level, brushing a curl away from her face. Because your mother never asked, sweetheart. And I did not want to sound like I was bragging about myself. But this is what I do. This is how I spend my time. On Thursday afternoon, we visited the senior center where I taught a weekly computer class that had become one of the most popular programs at the facility. The room was full of older adults, most of them in their 70s and 80s, struggling valiantly to keep up with technology that had not even existed when they were young and starting their own careers. Many of them had never touched a computer until they retired. And now they were trying to learn skills that seemed completely foreign to them. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the room smelled faintly of the coffee that was always brewing in the corner. Emma and Lucas sat on either side of Mr. Peterson, a 92-year-old veteran of the Korean War who was learning to use email so he could stay in regular touch with his daughter, who had moved all the way to Australia for a job opportunity 5 years ago. His hands shook slightly as he tried to type, and his thick glasses kept sliding down his nose. They helped him type out a message to her, carefully sounding out words and showing him patiently where to click the mouse, their young voices encouraging and never once showing frustration or impatience. That is it, Mr. Peterson. Now click that button right there. The one that says send. Lucas pointed carefully at the screen. Are you sure? Mr. Peterson asked nervously. What if I do it wrong and it goes to the wrong person? You cannot mess it up. We checked the address 3 times. Emma reassured him with complete confidence. When the email successfully sent, Mr. Peterson's face lit up with pure joy. I did it. I actually did it all by myself. Well, with your help, but I typed the whole thing. Across the room, I was working with Mrs. Rodriguez, a 78-year-old woman who had severe arthritis in her hands that made typing and using a mouse incredibly difficult and painful. She had been trying for weeks to learn how to video chat so she could see her grandson who lived across the country. Her daughter sent photos, but Mrs. Rodriguez wanted to see him move and hear his voice in real time. Today was the day we were finally going to make it happen. Okay, Mrs. Rodriguez, click this green button here and the call will connect. I guided her gnarled finger to the right spot on the screen. What if he cannot see me? What if I do something wrong and break the computer? You will not break anything, I promise, and he will definitely be able to see you. Your daughter is on the other end with him right now, waiting for us. Mrs. Rodriguez clicked the button with a trembling finger. For a moment, nothing happened, and I saw panic start to rise in her eyes. Then suddenly, the screen filled with the image of her daughter holding a chubby toddler on her lap. The little boy's eyes were wide with curiosity. Mama! Her daughter's voice came through the speakers. Can you see us? Can you hear us? Mrs. Rodriguez's hands flew to her mouth, and tears immediately started streaming down her weathered cheeks. Oh my God! Oh my God, I can see him. He is so big now. Maria, he has grown so much since the photos. Hi, abuela. The little boy waved at the camera. My mommy says you live far away, but now I can see you on the computer. Mrs. Rodriguez could not speak. She just sat there, tears running down her face, staring at her grandson's image on the screen. Emma, who had been watching from nearby, instinctively walked over and gently held Mrs. Rodriguez's hand, understanding somehow without being told that these were tears of happiness, not sadness. He is beautiful, Mrs. Rodriguez, Emma said softly. You must miss him so much. Every single day, mija. Every single day. Mrs. Rodriguez squeezed Emma's hand. But now I can see him whenever I want, thanks to your grandmother teaching me this magic computer thing. The video call lasted for 20 minutes. Mrs. Rodriguez talked to her grandson about his preschool, about the pictures he drew, about the songs he was learning. Her daughter showed her their new apartment, walking through rooms with the laptop. By the time they said goodbye, Mrs. Rodriguez had stopped crying, but her face was still glowing with joy. After the class ended and all the seniors had left, Emma walked beside me to the car, quiet and thoughtful. Grandma, she finally whispered, you make people cry happy tears all the time, don't not you? I pulled her close against my side, wrapping my arm around her small shoulders. That is the best kind of tears in the world, baby. Those are the tears that mean something really mattered to someone. Those are the tears that come when people feel connected and loved and seen. Do you cry happy tears too? Lucas asked from my other side. All the time, buddy. All the time. Especially when I see people like Mr. Peterson and Mrs. Rodriguez accomplish something they thought was impossible. That makes me happier than almost anything else in the world. Friday morning was the literacy program, and despite the chaos of the sudden and unexpected childcare arrangement, I had been looking forward to it all week with anticipation. I had started the program 3 years ago, after realizing during my work at the food bank how many adults in our community struggled to read at even a basic functional level. People would come in and pretend to read the signs, but I could see them struggling, see the shame in their eyes when they had to ask for help understanding instructions. It broke my heart every single time. We met in the library basement every Friday morning at 10 o'clock sharp, and it was always the part of my week I looked forward to most intensely. Watching someone sound out their first full sentence without any help, seeing the incredible pride that spread across their faces, hearing them talk about reading bedtime stories to their own children for the first time in their lives, seeing them fill out a job application independently without needing assistance, it never got old no matter how many times I witnessed these transformations. Each one felt like a small miracle. The library basement was cozy, with soft carpet and comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. There were bookshelves lining the walls, filled with books at all different reading levels. The fluorescent lights were softer here than in the rest of the library, and there was always hot coffee brewing in the corner and homemade cookies that volunteers brought. We had created a safe, welcoming space where adults could learn without judgment. Lucas sat next to James on one of the comfortable armchairs, their heads bent together over a mystery thriller novel. James was a 42-year-old construction worker who had dropped out of school in 3rd grade to help support his family after his father died suddenly in a workplace accident. He had worked hard his entire life, supporting his mother and younger siblings, and then later his own wife and 3 kids. But he had never learned to read properly, and it had limited his opportunities his entire adult life. He could not read instruction manuals at work. He could not help his kids with homework. He could not fill out forms without assistance. It had been a source of deep shame for him for decades. 3 months ago, his youngest daughter had asked him to read her a bedtime story, and James had to admit to her that he could not. The look on her face, the confusion and disappointment, had finally driven him to seek help. He had shown up at the library one Friday morning, his hands shaking, barely able to get the words out to ask if this was where the reading classes were held. Now, James was reading his first real novel, a thriller about a detective solving murders in a small town. He was on chapter 7, and he was determined to finish the whole book. Lucas listened intently as James read aloud, his rough voice stumbling occasionally over difficult words, but growing stronger with each page. Lucas's little finger followed along carefully with the words on the page, occasionally helping with a particularly challenging word when James got stuck. That is it, Mr. James. Keep going. You are almost to the good part where they find the clue. Lucas said it so earnestly and with such complete sincerity that James had to stop reading and wipe his eyes with the back of his rough, calloused hand. Sorry, buddy. I just get emotional sometimes. James's voice was thick. A year ago, I could barely read a menu at a restaurant. Now I am reading a whole book. A real book. You have got a special grandson there, ma'am. Real special, just like his grandmother. James told me, his voice still thick with emotion. He treats me like I am smart, like I am worth his time, even though I am still learning things that most second graders already know. You are incredibly smart, James. Learning something difficult as an adult that most people learned as children, that takes more courage and determination than most people ever show in their entire lives. You show up here every single Friday, without fail. You practice at home every night. You do not give up when it gets hard. That is real intelligence. That is real strength. I meant every single word from the bottom of my heart. Across the circle, Emma was sitting with Maria, a 35-year-old woman who had immigrated from Guatemala 5 years ago. Maria spoke fluent Spanish, but had never learned to read in any language. She had grown up in a rural village where school was not accessible, where girls were expected to work in the fields and at home, not sit in classrooms. Now she was working as a housekeeper at a local hotel, and she desperately wanted to be able to read the work schedules and instructions, to read notes from her children's teachers, to help her kids with their homework. Emma was helping Maria sound out words in a simple children's book, a story about a cat who went on an adventure. Maria struggled with each word, her accent heavy, her confidence fragile. But Emma was endlessly patient, encouraging her with every small success. You did it! You read that whole sentence all by yourself. Emma clapped her small hands together with genuine excitement. I did. Maria looked surprised and pleased. I really read it? You really did. And it was perfect. Emma gave her a high five. I watched them work together, my heart swelling with pride. Emma had learned more about compassion and patience in this 1 week than I could have taught her in a year of lectures. She was seeing people, really seeing them, understanding that everyone has a story, everyone has struggles, everyone deserves dignity and respect. After the class ended, we all gathered for coffee and cookies. This was the social time, where people could relax and chat without the pressure of reading. James came over to me, Lucas still holding his hand. Ma'am, I wanted to tell you something. James looked nervous. Last night, I read my daughter a bedtime story. All the way through. It took me 20 minutes and I messed up a bunch of words, but I read her a whole story. His eyes filled with tears again. She told me I was the best daddy in the world. She said she was proud of me for learning to read. I had to wipe my own eyes. That is wonderful, James. That is exactly why you are doing this hard work. And it is all because of this program you started. Because you saw people like me who needed help and you actually did something about it. I will never be able to thank you enough. You just did thank me. Seeing you succeed, seeing you read to your daughter, that is all the thanks I need. As we walked to the car later, Lucas was quiet, thoughtful. Finally, he spoke up. Grandma, why could not Mr. James read before? Is he sick? No, honey, he is not sick. He just never got the chance to learn when he was a kid. Sometimes life circumstances prevent people from learning things that seem basic to us. But he works really hard at it now, Lucas said. He practices every day. He does. And that is what makes him a hero in my eyes. It is easy to learn things when you are young and everyone expects you to. It is much harder to learn them as an adult, when you have a job and a family and people might judge you. But James does it anyway because he knows it is important. I want to be like Mr. James when I grow up. Brave like that, Lucas said seriously. You already are brave like that, buddy. You already are. But the biggest and most important day was Saturday. The fundraiser. The event I had been planning and meticulously organizing for 6 entire months, coordinating with dozens of local businesses, organizing over 100 volunteers, securing donations from all over the county, and even from some businesses in neighboring towns. It was going to be held at the community center, a full-day event starting at 9 in the morning and running until 5 in the evening, with multiple food stations and activity areas, and a silent auction that had grown to include over 200 items. All the proceeds would go toward building a brand new playground in the neighborhood that needed it most desperately, the area on the east side of town where half the kids qualified for free lunch programs, and the old playground equipment had been condemned for safety issues 2 years ago with absolutely no municipal money available to replace it. I got Emma and Lucas up early that morning, well before the sun had even fully risen over the horizon. The sky was just starting to lighten with soft pink and orange streaks. Today is going to be a very big day, possibly one of the biggest days of my entire year. I need my absolute best helpers. Are you two ready for this challenge? They nodded enthusiastically, their eyes bright despite the early hour. Already dressed in the matching bright blue volunteer shirts I had secretly ordered for them weeks ago, just in case an opportunity like this ever arose where I could include them in my work. When we arrived at the community center at 6 in the morning, volunteers were already gathering in the large parking lot, unloading supplies from their cars and trucks and vans. The air was crisp and cool, and everyone was moving with purpose and excitement. Dorothy was directing traffic with her clipboard firmly in hand, her voice carrying clearly across the lot as she called out instructions. My friend Carmen was setting up the food stations with help from her 3 teenage sons, arranging tables and checking the warming equipment. Robert, who owned the local hardware store and had been incredibly generous with donations, was assembling tables and chairs with practiced efficiency, his tool belt jangling as he worked. These were my people, the ones who truly saw me for who I was, the ones who knew my actual worth and valued my contributions. Patricia, here's where I need you to help me, Dorothy called out loudly, then caught herself with a surprised laugh. Oh my goodness, I mean, here is where I need Emma. Old habits. Can you help me hang these banners, sweetie? They are a bit heavy. Emma beamed with pure pride and ran over eagerly, practically bouncing with excitement. Lucas stayed close by my side as I coordinated the final setup details, checking items off my extensive lists, and making sure everything was positioned in its proper place according to the detailed layout plan I had drawn up. By 9 in the morning, when we officially opened the doors to the public and welcomed our first guests, everything was absolutely perfect. Every detail was exactly as I had envisioned it. The day was incredible in every possible way, exceeding even my highest hopes. Hundreds and hundreds of people showed up throughout the day, a steady stream of families and individuals. Children played games at the various stations we had set up, their laughter filling the air. There was a ring toss, a beanbag throw, a face-painting station that had a line wrapped around the building. Kids got their faces painted as butterflies and tigers and superheroes. They made crafts at the art stations, creating paper flowers and painted rocks and friendship bracelets. Everyone ate delicious food donated by local restaurants, including Dominic's Pizza, the Thai Garden, Maria's Tacos, and the Bluebird Cafe. People bid enthusiastically on auction items displayed on long tables, everything from a weekend stay at a local bed and breakfast to handmade quilts to gift baskets filled with local products. Local businesses had donated everything imaginable, from restaurant gift certificates worth hundreds of dollars to handmade furniture crafted by local artisans to spa packages from the new wellness center downtown. Around noon, the mayor arrived with her entire family. She was a tall woman in her 50s with silver hair and a warm smile. She stopped at our welcome table and asked to speak with me. When I came over, slightly nervous about what she might want, she asked if she could say a few words to the crowd. Of course, I told her, leading her to the small stage area we had set up. The mayor gave an impromptu but powerful speech into the microphone about the critical importance of community involvement and grassroots organizing, about how real change happens not from the top down, but from the bottom up, from people like me who see a need and work tirelessly to fill it. She talked about how government cannot do everything, how communities need champions and advocates. She pointed to me standing off to the side and called me one of the unsung heroes of our town. The crowd applauded loudly, and I felt my face flush with embarrassment and pride. And through it all, every single moment of that long day, Emma and Lucas worked right alongside me, never complaining once about being tired or bored. They helped run the children's craft station, showing younger kids patiently how to make paper flowers and explaining carefully how to fold the petals. They delivered plates of food to elderly volunteers who needed to sit down and rest their feet. They restocked supplies when stations ran low. They picked up trash and kept the areas clean. They watched as I gave multiple interviews to reporters from the local news stations, as I coordinated seamlessly with vendors when small problems arose, as I solved logistical issues on the fly with quick thinking and years of hard-earned experience. They saw me in my absolute element, doing exactly what I loved, making a tangible difference in people's lives in real time. Around 3 in the afternoon, Emma pulled on my sleeve once again, interrupting a conversation I was having with a donor. "Grandma, this is so incredibly cool. This is amazing. Mom said you do not do anything all day, but you actually do everything. You do so much. You are like in charge of this whole thing." I knelt down to her level, ignoring the persistent ache in my knees from being on my feet all day, looking directly into her eyes that were so much like mine. "Baby, I do what makes my heart truly happy and fulfilled. I do what genuinely helps people who need help. That is my real job now, my true calling, and it is honestly the best job I have ever had in my entire life. Better than any office job I ever had when I was younger." By the end of the day, as the sun was setting and casting long shadows across the parking lot, as we were cleaning up the last of the tables and chairs and breaking down the stations, Dorothy climbed up on the small makeshift stage one final time. She asked for everyone's attention, for all the remaining volunteers and visitors to gather around. She held up a piece of paper with the final tallies, and her voice shook with emotion as she announced the number into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am absolutely thrilled to announce that today, thanks to all of you, thanks to this incredible community, we have raised $47,312 for the new playground." The number hit me like a wave. $47,000. We had hoped for maybe $30,000. I had told myself that anything over $25,000 would be a success, but $47,000. That was enough to build an amazing playground, the kind of place kids would remember playing at for the rest of their lives. The remaining crowd of volunteers and community members erupted in thunderous applause. People were cheering and hugging each other. Emma and Lucas were right there in the front row, clapping so hard their small hands must have hurt, their faces absolutely glowing with pride and excitement. They were jumping up and down, celebrating like they had just won the greatest prize imaginable. Dorothy called me up to the stage. This would not have happened without this woman right here. She has given 15 years of her life to this community, and today is just one example of the incredible impact she has had on all of us. I could barely speak. My throat was tight with emotion. I managed to thank everyone, to acknowledge all the volunteers and donors and supporters. But mostly I just stood there, looking out at all those faces, feeling seen and valued in a way I had not felt since Richard died. That night I tucked them into bed and they could not stop talking about the day, their words tumbling over each other in excitement. "Grandma, can we come back and help again next time?" Lucas asked, his eyes already heavy with exhaustion but still shining with enthusiasm. "Anytime you want, buddy. Anytime at all. You are both natural volunteers." The next week continued in exactly the same pattern we had established, and I could see the children growing and changing with each new experience. We visited the women's shelter on Monday afternoon, a place that held a special significance for me, because it was one of the first volunteer positions I had taken after Richard died. The shelter was housed in a nondescript building on a quiet street, deliberately unmarked for safety reasons. I organized regular donation drives there and served on the advisory board, helping to shape policies and programs. Emma and Lucas helped sort through enormous bags of clothing and boxes of toys that had been donated by community members. The sorting room was large and bright, with tables set up for different categories. Winter coats in one area, children's shoes in another, toys organized by age group. The work was methodical and important, making sure that everything was clean and in good condition before being offered to the families who stayed at the shelter. "Why do these people live here instead of at their own houses?" Lucas asked innocently as he folded small shirts. I knelt down beside him, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes people are in situations where they do not feel safe at home. This shelter gives them a safe place to stay while they figure out what to do next, while they build a new life for themselves and their children. "Are the people here scared?" Emma asked, her eyes wide with concern. "Some of them are," I admitted. "But they are also incredibly brave. It takes tremendous courage to leave everything you know, even when it is bad, and start over. The women who come here are some of the strongest people I have ever met." We met several women that afternoon who were rebuilding their lives after leaving dangerous situations. There was Jennifer, a 32-year-old mother of two who had finally left her abusive husband after 10 years. She was taking computer classes at the library, trying to gain skills that would help her find employment. There was Aisha, who had fled her home country with her 3 children, seeking asylum from political violence. She spoke limited English but was working hard to learn, attending classes every morning while her children were in school. The kids at the shelter ranged in age from toddlers to teenagers, and many of them were dealing with trauma that no child should have to experience. Emma and Lucas played with some of the younger children in the common room, building block towers and coloring pictures. I watched as Emma instinctively understood to be gentle, to move slowly, to let the other children come to her rather than overwhelming them with enthusiasm. One little girl, maybe 4 years old with tangled dark hair and enormous brown eyes, sat alone in the corner clutching a stuffed rabbit. Emma noticed her and slowly approached, sitting down a few feet away. "I like your bunny. What is its name?" Emma asked softly. The little girl did not answer at first, just hugged the rabbit tighter. But Emma did not push. She just sat there, patient and present. After several minutes, the girl whispered something. "Snowball." Emma smiled. "That is a perfect name. I have a stuffed animal at home named Muffin. She is a dog." The little girl's eyes lit up slightly. "I like dogs. Maybe sometime you could meet Muffin," Emma suggested. "My grandma brings me here sometimes to help. Maybe next time I come, I could bring Muffin and they could have a play date with Snowball." The little girl actually smiled, a tiny, fragile smile that felt like a victory. "Okay." Later, as we were leaving, the shelter director pulled me aside. "Your granddaughter has a gift." The way she approached Sarah, that little girl who has barely spoken since she arrived here 3 weeks ago. That was exactly right. Some people are just natural healers. I looked over at Emma, who was holding Lucas's hand as they walked to the car. She is special, that one. They both are. The director smiled. You are raising them right. We spent several afternoons that week at the community garden I had helped establish 5 years earlier. The garden was a beautiful space, about 2 acres of land that the city had donated for community use. It was divided into individual plots that families could rent for a nominal fee, and there were also common areas where we grew produce that went directly to the food bank. The garden had become a gathering place for the community, especially for immigrants and refugees who found comfort in growing familiar foods from their home countries. Emma planted tomato seedlings with careful hands, her tongue sticking out slightly in concentration as she dug holes in the rich, dark soil. I showed her how to gently remove the plants from their containers, how to tuck the roots into the earth, how to pat the soil firmly around the base. Lucas watered the vegetable beds with an oversized hose that was almost too heavy for him to lift, his face serious with the responsibility of making sure each plant got enough water, but not too much. We met Mr. Hassan, an older man from Syria who had arrived in our town 2 years ago as a refugee. He was growing eggplant and mint and other plants that reminded him of his homeland. He spoke limited English, but his face lit up when he saw the children helping in the garden. You teach them young. That is good. In my country, everyone gardens. Everyone knows where food comes from. Here, children think food comes from store. He shook his head sadly but smiled at Emma and Lucas. My grandchildren were learning that food comes from the earth, I agreed, gesturing to the rows of vegetables. Mr. Hassan showed the kids his eggplants, explaining in his broken English how to tell when they were ready to harvest, how to prepare them in traditional Syrian dishes. He picked fresh mint leaves and let them smell the intense aroma. Emma's eyes widened with delight at the scent. We met Mrs. Nguyen, who was growing Vietnamese herbs and vegetables in her plot. She showed us lemongrass and Thai basil and plants I did not even know the names of. She explained through her daughter, who translated, how she had grown these same plants in Vietnam before the war, how the smells and tastes connected her to her childhood, to her mother and grandmother who had taught her to garden. Food is memory, Mrs. Nguyen's daughter translated. When my mother eats these foods, she is young again. She is home again. Emma listened intently. So the garden is not just about food. It is about memories and home and where you came from. Exactly, I told her, proud of her insight. The garden connects people to their past and to each other. It builds community. On Wednesday of that second week, we returned to the food bank for the regular distribution day. This was when families could come to shop for groceries, and it was always the busiest and most challenging day. The line often stretched out the door and around the building. Emma and Lucas worked at the welcome table, greeting people as they signed in, smiling at nervous first-time visitors, helping elderly clients carry their bags to their cars. One woman came in with 3 young children, all under the age of 6. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her clothes worn but clean. She approached the welcome table hesitantly. Is this where I can get food? I lost my job last month and we have been staying with my sister, but I do not want to be a burden and the kids need to eat and... Her words tumbled out in an anxious rush. You are in exactly the right place, I told her gently, putting my hand on her arm. You are not a burden. This is what we are here for. Let me help you. Emma got up from her chair and approached the woman's youngest child, a little boy who was clinging to his mother's leg. Hi, I am Emma. Do you want to see the toy area? We have some cars and trucks over there. The little boy looked at his mother for permission. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. While Emma distracted the children, I helped the mother through the process, making sure she got everything her family needed. Diapers and baby food for the youngest. Cereal and pasta and canned vegetables. Fresh fruit and bread. Toiletries and cleaning supplies. I loaded box after box into her cart. I do not know how to thank you, she said as we finished. I never thought I would need help like this. I always worked, always paid my own way. But things happen, you know? Life happens. I do know, I assured her. There is no shame in needing help. We all need help sometimes. That is what community is for. As she left, Emma came back to the welcome table. Grandma, that lady was crying. Did we do something wrong? No, sweetheart. Those were grateful tears, relief tears. Sometimes when people are struggling and someone helps them, It makes them emotional. Like happy tears? Lucas asked. Sort of. More like relieved tears. Like when you have been carrying something really heavy for a long time, and someone finally helps you put it down. I want to always help people put heavy things down, Lucas said seriously. Then you will have a very good life, buddy. I ruffled his hair. You will have a very good life. On Tuesday of the second week, we went back to the community center for the regular weekly programs. Emma attended the art class I had organized specifically for underprivileged children, watching in fascination as kids created absolutely beautiful paintings despite having so little access to art supplies at home. Lucas joined the after-school tutoring program, sitting quietly with older kids and offering genuine encouragement, even though he himself could barely read beyond simple words. That evening, as we sat together on my couch eating homemade pasta, Emma said something that broke my heart and put it back together at the exact same time. Grandma, some of these kids we met do not have very much stuff at all, but they seem so happy when they are at the community center with you. I pulled both children onto the couch closer to me, wrapping my arms around them. That is because people at the center genuinely care about them as individuals. Because they have a safe place to be themselves without judgment. Because someone actually sees them and believes in them and their potential. That is what I try to help create with my work. Not just programs or events or activities, but actual places where people feel like they truly matter as human beings. Lucas snuggled closer against my side. You matter so much, Grandma. You matter to everyone. On Friday afternoon, just 2 days before Patricia was due to pick up the kids, the local newspaper published a prominent feature article about the fundraiser. The headline read in bold letters, "Local volunteer raises $47,000 for new community playground." My photo was right there on the front page, standing with the mayor and surrounded by smiling children. The article went on for 3 full columns, detailing the event and my years of volunteer work in the community. Dorothy called me within minutes of the paper being delivered, laughing with delight. Have you seen it yet? Have you seen the article? I have it right here on my table. I was sitting at my kitchen table staring at the newspaper, still not quite believing my photo was on the front page. You absolutely deserve this recognition and so much more. You have worked yourself to the bone for this community for 15 years straight. Dorothy paused meaningfully. Are you planning to show Patricia when she comes? I do not need to show her anything at all. I know my own worth now. These kids know my worth. My community knows my worth. That is more than enough for me. But Saturday morning, something completely unexpected happened. My son Michael called my cell phone. Mom, I just landed at the airport. I am back early from California. Can I come by before Patricia picks up the kids tomorrow? Of course, sweetheart. The kids will be absolutely thrilled to see you. When Michael arrived an hour later, he had the newspaper folded in his hand. He walked into my kitchen and just stared at me for a long, uncomfortable moment. His eyes moving from my face to the newspaper and back again. Mom, why did not you tell us about any of this? About the fundraiser, about everything you have been doing all these years? I shrugged carefully, trying to keep my voice steady and not let the hurt show through. You never once asked me, Michael. His face crumpled with realization and guilt. I never asked. God, Mom, I never asked. I just assumed, we both just assumed without thinking, that because you were retired, you were just, I do not know, passing time somehow. Keeping busy with little hobbies. Emma and Lucas came running into the kitchen, throwing themselves at their father with squeals of delight. Daddy, Grandma is so amazing. We helped her all week long. She does so many cool and important things. Michael sat down and listened carefully as they talked over each other, telling him enthusiastically about every single place we had been, every person we had met, every activity we had done together. His eyes kept drifting back to the newspaper article, to the photo of me clearly coordinating volunteers, clearly in charge, clearly valued and respected by so many people. When Patricia arrived the next morning to pick up the children, Michael met her at the front door before she could even ring the bell. He handed her the newspaper without saying a single word, his jaw set firmly. I watched from my position in the kitchen as she read the article slowly, her face changing visibly from initial confusion to genuine surprise to something I could not quite identify. Shame, maybe, or regret. She walked into the kitchen slowly, the newspaper still clutched in her hands. I did not know about any of this. Her voice was much quieter than I had ever heard it. I had no idea you were doing all of this. I stood up from my chair, meeting her eyes directly and steadily. You never asked, Patricia. Not once in 5 years. You assumed that because I am not working in a corporate office, because I am not bringing home a paycheck, that my days were somehow empty and meaningless. But my days are incredibly full. They are full of purpose and meaning and people who genuinely need help. I may not be building a corporate career anymore, but I am building something that matters deeply to me. I am building community. I am building connections. I am building hope. The room was completely silent. Even the kids had stopped playing in the other room, somehow sensing the tension. Patricia set the newspaper down carefully on the table. You are absolutely right. I was completely wrong about you. I was so wrapped up in my own life, my own career, my own narrow idea of what has value in this world, that I could not see what was right in front of me the entire time. She looked over at Emma and Lucas, who were peeking around the corner. They have not stopped talking about you since I walked in the door. About all the incredible places you took them, all the interesting people you introduced them to, all the important things you taught them. Michael stepped forward, putting his hand on his mother's shoulder. Mom has been teaching us all a very important lesson. About assumptions, about respect, about what really matters in life beyond money and status. I felt tears threatening, but I held them back through sheer willpower. I do not need apologies or grand gestures from either of you. I just need to be seen. To be recognized as someone who still contributes meaningfully to the world, who still matters to people, who still has real value beyond being a convenient babysitter or an easy solution to your childcare problems. Patricia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Can we please start over? Can I actually learn about what you do every day? Can the kids keep coming to help you with your volunteer work? I looked at my grandchildren, their hopeful faces, and then at my son and his wife. We can always start over. But it requires actually seeing each other clearly, truly listening to each other, genuinely respecting each other's choices even when they look different from our own paths. Over the next several weeks and months, something fundamental shifted in our family dynamic. Patricia started asking real questions about my volunteer work, showing genuine interest. She attended one of my literacy classes as an observer and ended up volunteering herself as a tutor. Michael made a substantial donation to the playground fund specifically in my name. And Emma and Lucas became regular fixtures at the community center. Always eager to help out, always learning about compassion and service, and what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself. The new playground broke ground 3 months later on a beautiful sunny morning. I stood at the construction site with my entire family, watching as the first piece of equipment was carefully installed by the work crew. Emma held one hand, Lucas held the other, and for the first time in many years, I felt completely seen and valued by everyone I loved most. Dorothy stood beside me, smiling widely. You did it. You showed them who you really are. I shook my head firmly. I did not change who I am at all. I just stopped hiding it. I stopped accepting their limited view of my worth. I stopped making myself small to make them feel comfortable with their assumptions. The playground officially opened 6 weeks later with a big community celebration. It was absolutely beautiful, with bright primary colors and safe modern equipment, and plenty of space for kids to run and play and just be children. On opening day, there must have been 200 children there, their laughter filling the air like the most beautiful music imaginable. The mayor asked me to cut the ceremonial ribbon. As I stood there with the oversized scissors, my family standing behind me and my community gathered around me, I thought about Patricia's careless words that day 2 months ago. Since you do not do anything all day anyway. How utterly wrong she had been. How wrong I had almost let her make me feel about myself. I cut the ribbon cleanly, and the kids rushed past me immediately, heading straight for the swings and slides and climbing structures. Emma and Lucas were right in the middle of the crowd, already making new friends, already spreading the joy and compassion they had learned from watching me serve others. Patricia came up beside me, her eyes following the children. Thank you for not giving up on us, for not letting my ignorance and prejudice damage our relationship permanently. I squeezed her hand gently. We all have blind spots in our thinking. The important thing is being willing to see clearly when someone points them out to us. Michael wrapped his arm around my shoulders. I am so proud of you, Mom. Not just for this playground, but for everything. For building a meaningful life after Dad died. For not just sitting around feeling sorry for yourself, for finding purpose and diving in headfirst without hesitation. I learned a long time ago that my worth as a person is not determined by a paycheck or a fancy job title. It is determined by the impact I have on the people around me, by the service I give freely, by the love I share generously. That is what I want Emma and Lucas to learn from me. That is what I hope you two can understand now. The community center threw a special appreciation dinner for me the following month, in late October when the leaves were turning brilliant colors, and there was a hint of approaching winter in the air. They presented me with a beautiful crystal award for volunteer service, engraved with my name and recognizing my 15 years of dedicated work and unwavering commitment to the community. The award ceremony was held in the community center's main hall, the same space where we had held the fundraiser. But tonight it was decorated elegantly with tablecloths and candles and flower arrangements that Carmen had created. My entire family was there, sitting at a table right in front, watching as Dorothy gave a moving speech about all the programs I had started, all the lives I had touched, all the tangible difference I had made in our small town. "This woman," Dorothy said, her voice breaking with emotion as she gestured to me, "is the heart of this entire community. She sees needs and fills them without waiting to be asked. She sees people and values them as complete individuals, not just as problems to be solved. She gives her time, her energy, her creativity, and her love without asking for anything in return. She has fed hungry families through the food bank. She has taught adults to read through the literacy program. She has helped seniors connect with their faraway families through technology classes. She has created safe spaces for women fleeing violence. She has brought joy to children through art programs. And now, she has given the kids in the East Side neighborhood a beautiful playground where they can play and dream and just be kids. We are all better human beings because of her example, because of her tireless dedication, because she shows us every day what it means to truly serve others." I looked out at the crowd and saw so many faces I knew and cared about deeply. Mrs. Chen from the food bank, wearing her best dress and smiling widely. James from the literacy program, sitting with his wife and 3 children, looking proud and emotional. Mrs. Rodriguez from the computer class, waving at me from her table. Representatives from the women's shelter, including several women whose lives I had helped change. Kids from the art program, now teenagers, who had grown up with me as a constant presence in their lives. All the people whose lives had intersected with mine over the years. All the connections I had made through patient and consistent service. All the relationships I had built one interaction at a time. This is my legacy, I realized with crystal clarity as I looked at all those faces. Not money sitting in a bank account or property deeds or corporate achievements listed on a resume, but people. Real people whose lives were different because I had been part of them. Community. The web of relationships and support that held us all together. Love in action. Not just feeling compassion, but actually doing something about it day after day, year after year. When it was my turn to speak, I stood at the podium and looked out at everyone. For a moment, I could not find words. Then I thought about Patricia's comment that had started this entire journey. "Since you don't do anything all day anyway." "I do not think of myself as special," I finally said. "I am just someone who was lucky enough to find purpose after loss. When my husband Richard died 15 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought the best parts were behind me. I thought I would just exist, just pass time, until it was my turn to go. But this community saved me. You saved me. You gave me a reason to get up in the morning. You gave me work that mattered. You gave me relationships that sustained me. So really, this award should go to all of you for giving me a life worth living." There was not a dry eye in the room. Even Michael was wiping his face with his napkin. Patricia was crying openly, not bothering to hide it. After the dinner ended and most people had left, Patricia asked if she could speak with me privately. We stepped outside into the cool night air. The stars were bright overhead, and I could hear crickets chirping in the grass. "I have been thinking a lot," Patricia started, her arms wrapped around herself against the chill. "About what I said that morning. About how wrong I was. About how I have been wrong for 5 years. You have," I agreed simply. There was no point in sugarcoating it now. "I want you to know why," she continued. "Not as an excuse, but as an explanation. I was raised to believe that the only things that mattered were career success and financial achievement. My parents measured everything by those standards. Love, respect, attention. It all depended on what you accomplished professionally. When I met Michael and learned about his mom who just volunteered all the time, I honestly thought you were wasting your life. I thought you had given up, opted out, chosen the easy path. And now? I asked quietly. Now I realize I was projecting my own fears onto you. I am terrified of becoming irrelevant, of not mattering, of being forgotten. I thought if I stopped climbing the corporate ladder for even a moment, I would disappear. But you stepped off that ladder entirely and created something so much more meaningful. You have done more real good in your volunteer work than I have done in my entire corporate career. And I was too blind and arrogant to see it. I was quiet for a moment, letting her words sink in. Thank you for telling me that. For being honest. Emma and Lucas have not stopped talking about you. About the things you do, the people you help. Emma told me she wants to be like you when she grows up, not like me. She said you make people happy and I just make people money. Out of the mouths of babes, I said gently. Kids see things clearly sometimes. Will you teach me? Patricia asked suddenly. Will you let me volunteer with you? Really volunteer, not just show up once to make myself feel better. I want to understand what you do. I want to learn how to see people the way you see them. I would be honored, I told her honestly. We can always use more help. As we drove home that evening, my car full of tired but happy grandchildren and a thoughtful son and daughter-in-law, I felt something shift inside me. The anger I had been carrying, the resentment, the hurt from years of being dismissed, it was finally loosening its grip. Patricia was trying. That was all I could ask for. Real change took time. I knew that from my volunteer work. You did not transform someone's life in a day or a week. You showed up consistently. You offered opportunities. You extended grace when people stumbled. And slowly, over time, change happened. Now, almost a full year later, as I sit here reflecting on everything that transpired, my relationship with Patricia has transformed so completely that sometimes I have to remind myself how it used to be. She volunteers regularly at the community center now, dedicating at least 5 hours every single week, even with her demanding work schedule. She has even taken over organizing the entire annual back-to-school supply drive, bringing her corporate organizational skills to bear on making it the most successful drive we have ever had. Last year, we provided supplies to over 300 kids, more than double what we had done before. Michael has joined the board of directors for the literacy program, using his financial expertise to help us expand and serve more adults. He has also become one of our biggest individual donors, funding scholarships for students who want to pursue their GEDs. And Emma and Lucas, they spend every other Saturday with me now, learning about service and community and the incredible power of showing up for others. Emma has started a little book club at her school where older kids read to younger kids, inspired by watching the literacy program. Lucas volunteers at the animal shelter with me now, having discovered a passion for helping creatures who cannot help themselves. They understand something fundamental that many adults never learn, that the purpose of life is not just to achieve and acquire, but to connect and contribute. Last week, on a regular Tuesday morning, Patricia called me. Not to ask for anything, but simply to talk. We do that now, have actual conversations where she asks about my day and listens to my answers. But this particular call was different. I have been thinking about something, she said. I want to make a career change. I want to leave corporate work and do something more meaningful, something more like what you do. I was silent, surprised. That is a big decision, I know. But I wake up every morning and dread going into the office. I am good at what I do, but it does not feed my soul. Volunteering with you, seeing the impact we have on real people's lives, that makes me come alive in a way my job never has. What does Michael think? I asked. He supports me completely. We have enough savings that I can take some time to figure out what I want to do. Maybe work for a nonprofit. Maybe start my own foundation. I do not know yet. But I know I cannot keep living the way I was. Then you should do it, I told her. Life is too short to spend it doing work that does not matter to you. She was quiet for a moment. Thank you for not saying I told you so. I laughed. I thought about it, believe me. But that is not who I want to be. That is why you are the person I want to become, she said softly. Now, Sitting here today at my kitchen table with the morning sun streaming through the window just like it did that Tuesday morning almost a year ago, I think about everything that has changed. The playground is thriving, full of children every afternoon. The literacy program has doubled in size. The food bank serves more families than ever. And I have my family back, truly back, in a way I did not even know I had lost them. But more than any of that, I have proven something to myself that I desperately needed to prove. That my worth is not determined by other people's opinions or judgments. That I do not need validation from my family to know that my life has meaning. That choosing to serve others is not the easy path or the lesser path, but perhaps the most difficult and most rewarding path of all. I never wanted to teach Patricia a lesson that day. I never set out to prove anything to anyone. I simply refused to accept her limited view of who I was. I refused to be diminished by her words. I continued being exactly who I had spent 15 years becoming, and in doing so, I gave everyone around me the opportunity to finally see me clearly. The story did not end with the fundraiser or the playground opening or the appreciation dinner. It continues every day, in small moments and quiet conversations and steady acts of service. Emma and Lucas are growing up with a model of what it means to live a life of purpose. Patricia is discovering her own capacity for meaningful work. Michael has reconnected with the community he grew up in. And I am still here, still showing up, still serving, still proving every single day that a life dedicated to others is a life well lived. Sometimes Patricia will make a comment that reminds me of her old way of thinking, some casual dismissal of work that does not come with a salary or a title. And I gently but firmly remind her that value comes in many forms. Sometimes Michael will get busy with work and forget to ask about my week. And I tell him directly that I expect him to be interested in my life, not just assume I am always available for whatever he needs. Because I learned something crucial from that morning when Patricia left Emma and Lucas with me. I learned that I have to advocate for myself, that I have to insist on being seen, that I cannot wait for other people to recognize my worth. I learned that standing up for yourself is not selfish or aggressive, it is necessary. I learned that you teach people how to treat you by what you accept from them. And I learned that sometimes the best response to being underestimated is not words at all, but simply living your life fully and letting others discover what they had been missing. I showed Patricia what I had up my sleeve that day she dropped off the kids. Not a trick or a trap or a calculated revenge. Just my real life. My full, purposeful, meaningful, impactful life. The life I had built from grief and loss and determination. The life that mattered to me and to my community, regardless of whether my family understood it. And it turned out that showing her was enough. More than enough. It was everything we all needed.